All right, we are live a couple of minutes late because of technical issues. As you guys can tell, I'm not usually in this backdrop, not in my usual spot. Today here with Chad Hesser of Hesser Drywall. Chad, how are you doing today?
Pretty good. How about yourself?
I'm doing fine, despite our couple little internet issues there for a couple of minutes. But hopefully everything will be smooth sailing from here. Like I said, I'm not in my usual spot and I don't have my usual team. But yeah, so welcome to Glowjoy's Everything Construction Corner. For those of you who've never been here before or maybe are here live for the first time, this is a live stream where we talk about everything and anything construction, and we bring on incredible guests like Chad, who come from either a background in blue collar or started a blue collar business, transitioned into blue collar careers. And we really try to talk about anything and everything that has to do with the construction industry. So, Chad, I know you're extremely busy. Thank you so much for making the time to be here. Why don't you tell the folks where you're dialing in from and who you are?
I'm Chad Hesser, and I'm from Newton, Illinois. Started my own drywall business about 7 years ago, and been in it for about 18 total.
All right. That's probably the shortest intro we've ever had. So why
Not much.
don't I know you're not much of a talker. You can be if we get you talking about the right topics, for sure. So why don't we backtrack a little bit because I know you from other platforms. You're pretty active on Instagram and pretty active on the Instagram, I guess, drywall community, which I'm a small part of as the owner of a drywall and painting company, but you're not very active on LinkedIn or any of the other platforms. You've been on other podcasts, maybe told a little bit about your story, but here for our audience, they don't know anything about you, nor do they follow you on Instagram, probably. So, why don't we backtrack a little bit about you, how you got into construction, and why construction in the first place, and then we'll kind of dive into drywall later.
All right. I just remember as a little kid, I always kind of had this little knack for Legos and always wanted to build something as I got older. So I guess kind of fast forward a little bit. There's not a whole lot of story there, just like building things all the time. But
Yeah.
I was stuck in a factory for many, many years and just got to a point where I couldn't stay and working inside the little box. So I went to start working with a friend of mine who built houses. And of course, I loved every bit of it. But
Hmm.
I always wanted to get back into doing drywall for myself. And little by little, he helped me get there. And now here I am.
So, did you start part time while you were working at the factory?
I always done some light construction on the side, and then I done drywall on the side for several years too. But
Okay.
once I quit the factory, I was building houses full time.
So, what did you do at the factory?
I was a supervisor in a cabinet factory.
In a cabinet factory. So, still construction related, really, overall.
Oh yeah.
But you prefer drywall versus carpentry. Um, Tell us a little bit about that.
Um, I don't know. I think it's just maybe I mastered a skill of finishing drywall before I mastered anything really in construction. So it's just kind of like it was just easier for me. But at the same time too, it's I don't know. I kind of got an OCD with everything being nice, neat, and clean. So I think playing with mud gives me that little edge over just framing houses or something. I mean, I don't know. I can't see the finished product when I'm building a house versus, a lot of times I get to go back into houses after I finish the drywall or I do some custom finishes. So I get to see the
Hmm.
finished product. So I think that's kind of my biggest thing. I get closer to the finished product versus the beginning of it.
I think that's the case with most finishers, myself included. I'm a little bit OCD, maybe too detail oriented at times. And so I want to see the finished product versus, you know, I like to see the beginning. I do. Don't get me wrong, but it's still. I like to have control over the finished product, if you will, versus I don't really get to have too much of that control. I can, if I'm framing, up until somebody else takes over, and then I don't have that full control over everything.
Oh yeah, yep. I definitely feel you there.
Yeah, and not that I'm controlling or anything for the viewers, but I am the owner of a project management company. And so for me, the best way that I could control quality was to control the finished product and not have to keep calling subcontractors back to rework, and or as a painter, having to call back a drywall finisher to retouch up walls or to redo whatever needs to be redone. So having a very well-rounded understanding of finishing, even as a project management company, I think was really important to me, so that we could have that control of the finished product and see what it looks like. So I know that besides drywall, you also delve and do other finishes, similar to Venetian plaster, which is very popular up here in the Northeast. Why don't you tell us a little bit about
Several years ago, I just ran across a Facebook post for a product called Fresco Harmony, which is
that?
just a
Mhm.
water-based coloring you mix in with mud, but it
Mhm.
kind of has it does have a slight resemblance to some Venetian plaster finishes, but
Right.
it's a lot cheaper. So for me, just starting out in the trades, it was easier for me to, I guess, dabble in that versus Venetian plaster. But now I actually do both. Not, I wouldn't say I'm a master of Venetian plaster, but I do love playing with it, and I can do a lot of it. But yeah, I actually do a lot of the Fresco Harmony stuff with the mud. I'm actually doing 2 larger jobs now with it. So
Right. So we had one of the Fresco Harmony, I guess, team members, group members here on the show very early on in the season, actually. And we also brought on Corey from Tech Dry Tools.
right.
And so Fresco Harmony is pretty big in your community. And I keep hearing that it is way cheaper than Venetian plaster. You doing both Venetian plaster and the Fresco Harmony, can you explain to the viewers, maybe the designers that are watching this, the architects that select the finishes, how it's cheaper? Is it cheaper in product? Is it cheaper in labor? How does it, compare to some specialty paints, right? Like those European paints also that are very, very popular right now.
As far as being cheaper, it's cheaper in labor and materials, just because it basically just drywall mud. So where Venetian plaster, most of it's you got marble dust, limestone, and it's usually imported from Italy. So there's a lot of extra costs there. But
Right.
yeah, the labor aspect on Fresco Harmony is a lot easier, and most applications Venetian plaster, because what I call a Rosello and Venetian plaster is the marble type finish, and it's extremely labor intensive, especially on the last coat, and it does
Right.
wear you out. But now, yeah, it is definitely cheaper all the way around. But at the same time, too, since I do both, I kind of look at where I'm going to be using it, the type of client I got, who I'm talking to, what their preferences are, budget. So I mean, to me, it was almost a no brainer to offer different types of finishes,
Mhm.
because there's different types of clients, and some people just want different things. So why not offer more than just one thing?
Absolutely. I mean, I think you're spot on with that. And one of the reasons that I'm actually out of town is because I am doing a training out in Boston. So I took a job in Connecticut this week to be a little bit closer to the Boston area, and also have all my tools with me, right? So, you know, 2 for 1 and make some money, go to training, have my
Right.
tools already loaded up in the truck, and, you know, take this training and this knowledge back to New York. And, you know, having, I guess, as a finisher, and I'm not the only finisher in my company. In fact, I'm probably the last finisher in my company. You know, we try to delegate as much as possible, and then I jump in when we need me to jump in. But you know, I typically will tend to train on different things first, see how I like it, see how much product is used, like you just mentioned, right? Because even as a painting company, sometimes we'll go in and spray stuff, but when you spray, you waste way more paint than if you roll it on.
Right. Right.
So although it's waste, right, to spray, costs more in paint, it's cheaper in labor. So like, I mean, are we really saving, how much money are we really saving, right? Like, and people need to figure that out based off of their labor force and the type of paint they buy and whatever, which is going to be the same thing that you just mentioned. So you know, cost is a big thing for remodeling, as is time, right? If we're doing residential, or if we're doing any type of property that somebody lives in, we want to be in and out as quickly as possible. So when you're talking about different finishes, you know, I know you mentioned the fresco is cheaper, it's faster, but how much cheaper and how much faster? And not that I want to turn this into an ad for Nick, and shout out to Nick from Fresco Harmony. However, I feel like, you know, it is a specialty product that is relatively easy to use, that, you know, most people could probably pick up and start to do, and they can mark it up more and still compete with Venetian plaster, which is not as popular in the rest of the United States.
Right.
Yeah.
Starting out with fresco as far as the cost, your average color packs for a 3.5 gallon box of mud will cost about $20. So let's just say we go
Mm-hmm.
a 5 gallon bucket of colored mud is going to cost you, you know, let's just say 40-50 bucks. Now
Right.
you get the same amount of Venetian plaster, it's almost $400. So you're looking
Right.
at
So that's,
cost.
and then there's like a special finish coat that goes over it. And then that's kind of what seals everything, right?
Yeah.
And could you potentially, you know, use that sealer on regular plaster, let's say per se, and utilize the same techniques? Or do you have to use the specialty paint for it?
I've never used it on Venetian plaster, but I've used it on plaster-based paints.
Okay. Yeah,
I've
that's kind of what I was thinking, plaster-based paint.
used Fresco Harmony Sealer on 3 different products. So it's very versatile. It is acrylic, so it will stick to Venetian plaster if you did choose to, because
Yep.
it's the pH balance of the lime and the acrylic will actually bond. So,
Hmm.
but now going back to like the application process too, we're talking about time. Or Fresco Harmony, let's just say new construction or new drywall, you just got to tape it and put 1 coat of mud on, and then you can apply the Fresco Harmony. And now if you went to Venetian plaster, you'd have to do a level 5 finish, primer it, and then use a special primer on top of that primer. So you got drywall primer and then like a quartz primer, or just a high pH type of primer, like an acrylic primer. And then
Hmm.
you can put your Venetian plaster. So I mean, there's a
Okay, so there's like
process.
a whole bunch of extra steps that
Oh,
are
yeah.
a part of this.
Yep.
So, one of the main reasons I love to bring in people from the field to this show, particularly one that is live on LinkedIn, is because this is where the architects, the engineers, and the designers live, that think, oh, yeah, that'll take 2 days, you know, or
But,
that should be, you know, fairly easy or super cheap, or this is going to be cheaper than wallpaper or whatever. And we go to these meetings sometimes and we're like, how did they come up that this is cheaper than wallpaper? You know?
Right.
Or, you know, like we try to figure out like how they came up with this rationale, right? And maybe it comes from the supplier side, and the suppliers are just salespeople. They'll say whatever they got to say to sell a product, right?
What you want
And
to do?
we have to keep that in mind. So, you know, I love to ask these detailed questions because I know that there are going to be designers that are listening. There are going to be decorators that are listening, that homeowners, business owners, hoteliers are going to hire. And typically these people get hired before we do, right? I own a
Right.
project management company, so I'm lucky. I get brought in during pre-construction sometimes, not always. I wish it was always. And you know, we try to get in as early as possible, but usually the owner is working with a designer, a decorator, or an architect long before we come in the picture. We
Right.
come in the picture when they want a price.
Correct.
And for some of your projects, I assume that you kind of play the role of decorator, designer, help the owner to select because maybe they didn't hire that person, they are that person, and then you're just making recommendations based off of being the tradesperson or the owner of the business and, you know, the actual person doing the work on the walls. And to me, that's like much better because you know it's going to last, you know it's going to work within their budget. And a lot of times, designers, decorators, architects, and other people that get involved in these selections of finishes don't really know the cost or the time constraint of things. So maybe something is cheaper, but it takes much longer, right?
Right.
And so just knowing the process of how to do stuff, I think for me, I'm a nerd. So, you know, it's always super, super interesting.
Yep. Always is.
So you said, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the work that you did in a drywall crew. You said you were doing drywall part time or on the side as a side hustle while you were working, you know, in this factory, right?
Right.
There is a stigma around, you know, people in the field, right? That they're not very smart, that they lack all sorts of different skills. And here you are talking about pH balance, you know, a couple minutes ago, and
Yep.
how different chemicals interact, right?
Yep.
And we're talking about labor and cost and estimating. So there's a lot that goes not just into owning a business in the construction industry, but also just being in the trades themselves. So working in a fast factory, having young kids running around, you know, a whole family, and then having this side hustle, you know, where did you find the time to even learn this extra trade? You know, was it a passion for you? Was it this is what I just got to do? How did it even come about that you ended up there?
More necessity.
Okay.
Back when my wife and I were younger and I think we only had 2 girls at the time,
Mm-hmm.
but she was trying to go back to school to do something better than just minimum wage jobs. And I was, at the time, I wasn't even in management yet. So I was still doing, mediocre pay. And, we had a little bitty house. We had another kid on the way. So it's like I had to do something. And
Right.
a buddy of mine had his own drywall business. So he kind of gave me the idea to start working with him.
Mm-hmm.
So, as crazy it may sound, this is what I'd done. I would work the overnight shifts in the factory and then come home and he'd pick me up and we'd go to work. So basically from 10 o'clock at night till about 4 o'clock the next afternoon, I was working. I'd come home and spend a few hours with the family and then I'd sleep until it was time to go back to work. So yeah, it was all necessity. And to be honest, at the time when I finally got done doing drywall on the side with him, or as my second full time job, I said I'd never
Mm-hmm.
do it again. Swore I'd never do it, but here I am, and I love it. So
So, and the reason that I ask that is because a lot of times what we end up doing is not what we picked to do, and you ended up doing that out of necessity, but here you are, a whole decade plus later doing it yourself,
yep.
and you love it, and you run multiple crews, and you're running multiple jobs from what I can see online at the same time. You're traveling with Fresco Harmony and, doing different things. So still extremely busy.
Oh yeah.
And, got your hands dipped in many, many, many different things. And at this point, I'm assuming it's not out of necessity. It's more out of passion, love, and a drive to grow, but how do you find the balance between everything that you have going on, your family, your kids, and your personal life?
Um, that is something I struggled with for about the last 6 years. Maybe in the
Mm-hmm.
last year, I've finally gotten to the point to where I guess you'd say I trust other people to take over my job instead of me doing everything. There was
Right.
a point in time where I would work 7 days a week for months on end, but I'd say probably the last several months, I finally got to the point where I'm having other drywall finishers come in and help out. I've even had other Instagram influencers come in and help out. Um,
Right.
so like now I got 3 different crews running that's got their own businesses, and now I
That's
can take over.
awesome. So you're subcontracting. Look at you.
And I'm allowing more time for me to take it easier and take weekends off now. So I don't work weekends anymore.
What do you do on your free time? I mean, and I say that because for somebody who was also a workaholic, where I was like, work, 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 work. And again, for me, it was necessity, maybe a need to like have to prove myself to reach a certain level, whatever everybody's drive is. But for the first couple years of the business, yeah, I was very similar to you, 7 days a week, um, almost 24/7. I actually have a guy in my crew that's very similar to you. So shout out to Angel, who works with us during the day and works at night somewhere else. And, he's doing it. And he also is like an investor and like is in this whole fix and flip game. He has a lot of energy though, bless his heart. You know,
Right.
and so I love Angel, but Angel does the same thing you do, and it's not for lack of like pay, right? Like everybody pays him really well. He's just got these goals that he wants to hit, and so double shifts is what he's decided he's got to do for however long. And I respect it. Like I totally respect the hustle, and I admire it. I've done it myself, and I totally get it. Um, what is it that you do for fun though? When you're not drywalling, what are you doing on weekends now?
For a while, pretty much as little as possible, just to relax, try to recoup
Okay.
over the last couple of years. But no, getting ready to go on vacation, so I'm starting to do a lot of planning for that. Been doing a lot of yard work lately. Just I got 4
Oh,
years here of all kinds of stuff to clean up and fix up. But no, for the most part, I just kind of tinker around the house. I've been so involved with business over the last
I
several
think we
years.
froze there for a couple of minutes. Oh, yeah, we're freezing up. All right, it looks like we're back. Looks like we're back. Um, yeah, so we rose up where I was asking about what are you doing now on the weekends? You said that you relaxed for a little while, and now,
Oh,
oh
were
no,
you?
we are totally frozen. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Does this is the issue with lifestyle. But I'm happy that you get weekends off now. I really am. Anybody should work 24/7 or 7 days a week. I know that, especially here in America, the hustle culture and the go, 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 go is, glorified. And the more you hustle, the harder you work, the more hours, the better you are. And that's complete BS. I think we should, act a little bit more like the Europeans, right? And take our siestas in the middle of the day and long holidays and vacations.
Oh yeah, enjoy life.
Yeah,
Most definitely.
absolutely. Because otherwise, why are we working? Like, why are we doing all the things that we're doing? I mean, yeah, we're paying bills, we're keeping a roof over our head, and you've got kids, so obviously, you're taking care of your kids and your family. But, outside of paying bills, we also need to live a little bit, right? And I think that especially young business owners tend to forget that. They think they need to stack up as much as possible,
Oh yeah,
or
yeah.
keep reaching that next milestone or that next goal. I've actually started to take a week off in between projects, like large projects. I've like forced myself and the team to take a week off in between projects.
It's never a bad thing.
Um, well, like some of our larger projects that last a couple years or, may last up to a year or like 9 months, 8 months. There's a lot going on during those projects. Um, Energy is high and low. Attitudes are high and low. I know that some of these big custom homes that you work on, you might see them when it's a hole in the ground and then show up 8 or 9 months later, and that's when it's your time to do what you're going to do. So imagine being the project manager during that entire 8, 9 month period for all of the trades. Um, and so giving folks a week off to catch up on admin, breathe, and not have to think about a job site, I think it's for our mental health,
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely.
Yeah, it's definitely for our mental health. So what is next for Hesser Drywall?
Mm. Right now, we'll just keep pushing forward. And we got some pretty big projects coming up over the summer. Probably have another collaboration, probably late summer, early fall.
Okay.
Haven't really started planning that yet. I got some people in line, but also got to deal with everybody that's involved on the build to clear a few different things through. But really not too much exciting. Just we're just busy, busy, busy. I mean, I really don't have any daylight in the schedule till probably winter time, but I never say no. Always find a way.
You know, it's crazy that you say that. There's so many other small companies just like yourself. And I say small companies, you're in a small town, you run a couple crews, but you're still out there in the field doing your own stuff. You're an owner operator. They're not as busy as you are. So how do you manage to stay so busy?
It's just years of building your reputation up and making sure that you can just sustain that reputation. And once you get it, it's I think we've talked about this before, like me, you, and Scott one time, where sometimes you can be the most expensive contractor and the busiest, and there's a reason for that. It's because you take care of the customers, you do the job right, you do it well, you're
Hmm.
always punctual, you meet your deadlines. You don't say you're going to show up tomorrow and then show up next week. It's a lot of it's just reputation and customer service. I mean, it's quality and customer service.
Quality and customer service matters so much, and it's so underestimated. And I think, it's one of the things that our industry lacks the most. I actually reached out to a client whom signed his agreement 2 months ago with us almost.
Right.
And we told him that we would be ready to work, on his property the week of the 27th of May, right?
Right.
So a couple weeks to the 27th of May. So we reached out to him and let him know, like, hey, we're still on track to be there the week of the 27th. In fact, we're ahead of schedule on another project, so we can actually be there the week prior if you want us to, blah, 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 whatever. And kind of gave him a checklist for the start of the job. And he was like, oh, when you reached out to me, I thought you were going to tell me that you were delayed and you couldn't start, and here you are ahead of schedule. He was like, well, that's different,
Yeah.
And just our whole process overall is very different. And while I can't say that I finish product any better than some of the top finishers here in our area, the customer service and the quality and just that overall experience is why people do come back. So, we gloss over it. But if you're super busy and booked out till winter, kudos to you, because for a specialty contractor, that for most of them is pretty tough, unless they're huge companies pumping out these big multifamily developments where they effectively just work for a prime and they just keep, pumping out. And that's a strategy, right? You, Scott, and I talked about that. It is a strategy, but it's a long-term play. And it takes a really, really big risk on yourself and your business.
Right.
So last question, and then we will let you get back to your day. I know that you probably got crews all over the place. So definitely want to make sure that we give you time to wrap up your day. For the younger generation that may be watching this show or maybe listening in the background with their parents that are, I don't know, confused about what they need to be doing in life. Maybe they've thought about going to college, or they're not sure if they need to go to college or what a blue collar career looks like. What would be your one or two pieces of advice, as they explore potentially a career in the trades or in any facet of construction?
First and foremost, expect to change your mind. I mean, I started out, we froze. Did we freeze?
Yeah, we did, but we're back.
Yeah. Expect to change your mind. You don't have to be sure what you're going to do right off the bat. I was 36 when I started my own business, but I have also went to college right after high school, got a degree in psychology, but I'm a mudslinger. So you don't necessarily have to have a college degree to get anywhere. And I think nowadays, especially with the high demand in the trades, you will probably make a lot more money and have a more sustainable job in the trades. But at the same time, too, don't be afraid to try it. Because I think that's what put me so far behind of being successful was in my mid-20s, I kind of wanted to do something like this. And I was too scared because, what if I fell, or what are my buddies going to think, or, what's my competition going to think?
What are your buddies going to think, right? Because there is still very much a stigma of, oh, well, if you work in blue collar, or, if you're slinging mud, like you just said, then you got to be pretty dumb, and, you just can't hack it in an office job or corporate or whatever, right?
Right. No, it's doesn't mean you're stupid. I mean, there is a stigma even in smaller communities too, that, if you work in construction, that you're not as bright as, say, somebody that works at a bank. But I will say I know all types of people in all different sectors, that some of your most brilliant people work in construction. I mean, just the things they do and got to know. I mean, it's and it's not something you can just literally teach people. I mean, you have to really just be in it. And I mean, it takes a certain type of person, but I'm not saying nobody or not everybody can do it. I'm just saying anybody can do it. It's just like it's just something you can't just be taught right off the bat. I mean, it's people in construction are brilliant.
I don't disagree with you, and we've had many guests here on this show that also agree with you that people in construction are some of the brightest minds, and it requires quite a bit of intelligence, both emotional intelligence and um, physical, like everything, right? Being book smart and understanding of math and understanding of science and just understanding how products are going to work together, how humidity affects and heat and air and cooling and everything, right? We were having an issue with floors at one of the gyms that we had built out, and it's crazy because there's multiple studios, and one studio was having the issue and the other studio was not, and they're both on the same sub level. So what gives, right? And what gave was the level of humidity and how quickly or how slowly the room took to heat and cool during off temperatures. And so that affected actually the adhesive in the space, which then affected the subfloor. And you sit there and you're like, we're just putting freaking floors down, right?
Right? It's supposed to stick.
Right. But you're not just putting floors down. And, this is with any product. We talk about skim coating ceilings. I'm skim coating ceilings right now. And I'm in two separate areas. And one area has more retention than another. I actually had to go over it with some plaster weld. Primer just was not enough. you know? It just, I put mud up and it started to just chip off, like it wasn't bonding properly because it just wasn't drying properly. And clearly, I mean, there's not enough insulation up in the space, right? Clearly. But prep is also everything. Like how you prep a surface or how you don't prep a surface also really does matter. So lots going on in construction. You got to be really smart to work in construction. It's not just picking up a tool or picking up a hammer or
A lot more than swinging a hammer, yes.
What?
A lot more than swinging a hammer, yes.
Way more than swinging a hammer. And for those who, and we've talked about it before, for those who don't want to swing a hammer, could care less about tools, there's so many other jobs in construction. Owners like Chad don't like to do their own admin. They rather be out in the field running crews and teams and actually doing work themselves. Bookkeeping for construction is another one. Project management, obviously, when you look at larger jobs, or even you're running 3, 4, 5 jobs sometimes at once. You're your own project manager, but I'm sure you could use one.
It really does.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. So where can people find you, Chad?
I have a Facebook page and an Instagram account. That's pretty much the only thing I really do. I'm not super active, but at the same time too, it's most of my content is just something different because everybody can post the same stuff about their daily routines, but I usually just wait until I got something that's different or interesting to post. So yeah, there's not a whole lot of activity, but I'm there.
All right. And it looks like we've got you up, Hesser Drywall, I believe, on all platforms. So go ahead and give Chad a follow, guys. Apologies in advance, again, for the, towards the end, apologies for the internet issues, not at my usual site, running on my laptop and running solo today. But thank you so much for those of you who tuned in live. For those of you catching the replay today, of course, make sure you hashtag replay in the comments. Let us know how things are going and what you thought about the show. And we've got David Leeper here on LinkedIn saying estimated job. Yeah, absolutely. And so, leave us your comments, leave us your thoughts. Go ahead and give a follow. Make sure you like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. My social media team would, have my head if I didn't say all those things. So yeah, definitely make sure that you like, follow, subscribe, and hit all the notifications on all of the different platforms, and at Hesser Drywall on Instagram as well as on Facebook. Make sure that you give Chad a follow. Chad, thank you again for being here. Thank you for making the time, especially in the middle of the day. Really, really appreciate you. Hope you have an amazing weekend. Amazing weekend.
You too.
Yep. And I'll catch up with you really soon. Cheers.
All righty. See you, Gloria.
Bye, everybody.